Hello and welcome to Transform Now. I'm your host, Michael Marchuk,
And I'm Brad Hairston.
and this is our weekly pulse check of AI and automation news. And this week, Brad, we only have 3 articles. Usually I go to 4, sometimes to 5, but today we only have 3. Why, you may ask? Because we have a lot to talk about, a lot. So let's start with our first article here. This is from PC Magazine, or PC Mag, I should say. Article's titled, OpenAI, DeepSeek used our models to train their own. And this article goes on to talk about how DeepSeek, and if you don't know about DeepSeek, you probably haven't looked at your LinkedIn here this particular week because it had blown up. And maybe we didn't even see that the markets dropped, the US stock markets, probably global markets, but the US stock markets for sure dropped heavily as NVIDIA's stock got hit hugely when this news came out about DeepSeek, the Chinese LLM that purportedly does a better job than OpenAI does. So, Brad, get us up to speed on this whole DeepSeek thing.
Wow, it's the week of DeepSeek, right? And Michael, had you heard of DeepSeek this time last week?
I had, but I hadn't played with it until this week, and then I realized how much waves it was going to make.
Yeah, I had not. I had not heard about him. I didn't hear about him, honestly, until this past weekend. And then Monday, I get up and start my work day, and I see that the world has basically turned upside down as a result of DeepSeek and their claims and it just took the world by storm. So before I dive into this, let me wish you a happy birthday. I know we're recording.
Thank you very much. I'm 29 again, as I have been for the past many years.
You wear it well, my friend. So DeepSeek has truly turned the world upside down. I don't think there's been a single topic that has been, posted that has received more posts on social media or more articles or more talking heads than this firm from China who emerged on the scene and has brought a new model to the foray, which that's not new. New models are appearing all the time, but they come forward and show that they have an innovative new reasoning model which can match the performance of models like ChatGPT, but do it at 1/10 the cost. So that was enough to capture everyone's attention. They're like, whoa, wait a minute. They can do it faster, cheaper, use less energy, be more environmentally friendly, all those things. And normally when something like this happens, it takes a few weeks for people to kind of vet it and think about it, whatever. Well, no, the US markets, we lost $1.2 trillion on Monday, one day reaction to DeepSeek. And NVIDIA, you mentioned them, they suffered the worst one-day loss in value in history, $600 billion in one day. So this is we haven't seen this before, right? This is such a huge market reaction to this technology disruption. And I think we've seen reactions that to technology disruption, but I don't know that we've seen one to something halfway around the world, from China of all places. So anyway, it's been a weird week. Everyone's been talking about how this changes everything, how AI's changing. We're going to rethink the way we build our models. We're going to rethink investments like the $500 billion investment that got announced last week in Texas to build new data centers. And then just today, we hear this article is speaking about it. We hear from OpenAI, they've accused DeepSeek of a distillation process in which they're using outputs from their larger, more capable models in order to train the DeepSeek models. So this is a pretty hardy accusation because they're basically refuting a lot of the claims that DeepSeek makes about, we built our model, with $6 million and it cost you billions. They're claiming, well, you did it because you used our models to train your models. it raises questions about a lot of the other things that DeepSeek has said about their infrastructure cost and so forth. So it's kind of brought everything full circle to a degree. I will be very interested to see how the markets and how all the pundits and everyone react to the OpenAI accusations. But I'll tell you, the last few days, it's all been very pro DeepSeek. Oh my goodness, this changes everything. We're going to rethink the way we do automation and AI going forward. So we'll see. It's such a huge. I mean, in my head, I'm getting whiplash from the way that the news has evolved. Between Monday and today and Wednesday.
Well, I think it's very interesting because in my mind, as we're hearing about OpenAI, accusing DeepSeek of violating its terms and doing all this stuff to be able to distill their huge model that took them all that time and effort to create. And on the backside of all this, while they're pointing fingers at DeepSeek, there's still a whole lot of people, with lawsuits included, who are pointing fingers at OpenAI going, hey, you took all my copyrighted material and trained your model on it for free. So it's interesting having the pot calling the kettle black in this one here. And I really think that this whole concept of ownership of the AI outputs is difficult. It's definitely difficult. But if you look at the terms of service for DeepSeek, it's very interesting to tell you what they do with the information. The output that DeepSeek provides when you go to use their model, it becomes the intellectual property of DeepSeek. So all of their output that they create is theoretically their intellectual property. So any code you may write out of it or anything that comes out of it is their property. And it's, of course, housed in the very secure facilities in China. So
totally. And there's already at least one country, I think it's Italy, that has is debating whether they're going to allow DeepSeek to be used by their citizens for that reason. They see some risk here. I think the DeepSeek thing. Let's assume that what they've created, a lot of the methods they've used, maybe they are much more efficient. Maybe there are some things that we can take away from it, some positives. If it really only uses around 5% of its parameters for every task, which is one of the things it says. If it really only uses 95% less computing power, which is more environmentally friendly, we can't dispute that. The fact that it's open source, right? It's a smaller version of AI, which, we've seen things trending in that direction anyway. But we still have big things to figure out and to be wary of. You mentioned the one about IP. We also have, I think early on, people have found that DeepSeek is not as good as at some of the complex conversations. It struggles with certain coding tasks. There's the censorship aspect, which, you've done it, I've done it, put in questions about sensitive topics that the Chinese government doesn't want to talk about. And sure enough, the model it stops short of giving you any outcome. There's the fact that DeepSeek apparently has a strong connection to a Chinese hedge fund that is under some suspicion. So there's all these things that I think should cause everyone to take pause. But maybe there are some takeaways. Maybe some of the innovation will be useful for companies like OpenAI and Meta and Amazon, et cetera. To me, it's just a huge life lesson that we can't react so quickly to something that comes especially out of an autocratic country. It's okay to be excited and be interested and do a little research on it. But the way that the whole world has reacted, the way the markets have reacted, the way that AI experts everywhere are saying this changes everything. Maybe perhaps they acted a little bit too promptly.
Well, let me just reinforce the fact that you mentioned that this is part of a hedge fund. And how much money did the market go down when that happened? So there are likely some plays that will need to be reviewed. But
do you think do you think that hedge fund shorted NVIDIA stock last week?
I'm sure they didn't. That would be unethical to do something like that, to release news that would impact the market. That would be, I'm sure they didn't do that. All right. Well, moving on from DeepSeek, which we've all heard quite enough about at the moment, to Davos. So interesting article here. This is from CNN Business. Today's CEOs are the last to manage all human workforces, says Mark Benioff. So an interesting article and an interesting concept. We've been talking about the transition to digital workers and some of the work that's being transitioned from humans to these digital workers for quite a while now. So this is not news to us in that regard, but to have this coming out in such a public forum, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Benioff, is the CEO of Salesforce, and the quote from the article, which says it all: from this point forward, we will be managing not only human workers, but also digital workers. So I'm not surprised at all to hear this from Benioff, because he has been one of the loudest proponents for agentic AI. In fact, Salesforce, you might say, in some circles, has been on the leading edge of this. They came out with their Agentforce AI, agentic AI platform, which allows their customers to, create and deploy these agents to do certain types of activities. Benioff has been talking about this ad nauseum, and at the end of last year, he was talking about third quarter. He said he already had 200 deals just based on the Agentforce capability. And then he said he had thousands in the works. So we'll see if that proves out, if that's genuinely what they get out of this in terms of market results. But it is a really, really big deal. So I don't think, Michael, he's talking about digital workers like we talk about digital workers. We're usually referring to RPA bots, like Blue Prism bots. I think he's talking about AI agents, and he sees a world like many do, not too far in the future, where we have human workers, and then we have a multitude of these AI agents floating around, many of which are probably orchestrating and dictating work to digital workers, bots, that is, RPA bots, that are going to do a lot of the work. So I don't think he's a heretic, or he's lost his mind. I think he's probably saying the right things, and he's very ambitious about it. He also, in the article, is quoted as being supportive of the $500 billion project Stargate, and says that this is just the first of trillions of dollars of investment that will be happening in the near term. And of course, Salesforce wasn't involved in Project Stargate, but who knows? They probably have their own version of that going on elsewhere. Likely. So Benioff is, sometimes he gets criticized for being a little bit of a loose cannon. I think in this case, he's right. And I think whether or not the Agentforce AI agents prove to be the best in the market, we'll have to watch and see. But he's certainly pushing it hard, and seems like his clients are buying into it.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, the digital workforce is not something that we are unfamiliar with. I mean, this has been something that is our core business and what we do. And we certainly have many, many customers who are getting a boatload of value out of them. But as we transition to smarter digital workers, whether they're AI enhanced or they're AI agents of their own right, there's a need then to help coordinate all their activities, and also to be able to integrate them into the overall workforce. And, with SS&C, we've been working really hard on this enterprise operating model that does a lot of that, where we bring that all together. And so it's one thing to say we have all these capabilities. It's another thing to help your customers integrate this into their overall business structure. So you didn't mention much about that. Just, get your employees ready, which is not super helpful, but we're actually doing something about it.
Yeah.
All right. So last article from InfoWorld. This kind of comes back full circle to some of the security discussions we'd originally had about LLMs in general. But this is entitled Secure AI? Dream On, says AI Red Team. This is all about Microsoft's ethical hacker team, notice a red team, that is used to test and help refine some of the parameters that guide the output from their large language models and other systems. So, what are your thoughts on this particular article?
Well, first of all, this reminded me of the movie Sneakers, starring Robert Redford. Do you remember that movie? I think it's
very old.
90s, maybe the 80s. So, this group of hackers, professional hackers that you hire to break into your company or tap into your infrastructure. And so anyway, in this case, we're talking about Microsoft having their own team that does this. I'm not surprised.
To their own systems.
Yeah, to their own systems. And, it says that the reason they have such a big red team is because AI has become so much more sophisticated, and because Microsoft themselves are rolling out new AI products all the time. So this team has developed their own Python framework, and then that in turn has resulted in another framework called AIRT that they use to identify impactful vulnerabilities, and then figure out how they want to address the risk there. And by doing all that and through going through this routine over and over again, they've come up with 8 lessons along the way, which they put in this article. And I'll cover a few of them, not all 8, certainly. But the ones I thought were pretty interesting. The first one, they said that it's important to understand what the AI system can do and where it is applied. So start from the potential downstream impacts, and then make it instead of looking at the attack strategies, that is, and that's going to make it more likely that an operation will produce useful findings that tie to real world risks. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, is kind of start with the end in mind, versus the other way. They talk about the role that automation can play in covering the risk landscape. I thought that was pretty interesting. That there's so many different vulnerabilities that need to be assessed, and you need to stay on top of it. It's more than a human workforce can handle. So they talk about that being one of their big findings, that you really do need to leverage automation. So I think we would agree with that, obviously. They also say that even if you do use automation, that humans are absolutely needed. You can't automate the whole thing because there is some subject matter knowledge that's needed. There's some emotional intelligence that's needed. And those are things that only humans can really bring to the forefront. So that's another one of their findings. And then 2 more. Responsible AI is very difficult to measure. So I think it's interesting that they kind of deviate from what they're looking at, and they say, and by the way, responsible AI, it's a good thing, but it's very ambiguous and it's hard to measure. And so we really focus more on security vulnerabilities. We're not trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. That's kind of how I took their point. So this team,
would you liken that to the censorship that's kind of built into the model from the Chinese DeepSeek?
Yeah. That's a great way to think of it. I agree. And then the final point that they made in here, which I completely understand, and really I think this is the heart of the article, is that large language models amplify existing security risks and are continually introducing new ones. So this is why they say at the beginning of the article even that this work is never going to be done. We're never going to be 100% safe, because just when we mitigate some risk, there's going to be a new one created. There's going to be something else that comes along. And there was a quote at the beginning that I found really interesting that one of the people on this red team put out there, which is, how should we probe for dangerous capabilities in LLMs such as persuasion, deception, and replication? I mean, you think about that question a lot. That explains why this is so difficult. And I think they're making some strides, but they're very wise to say we're not there yet, and we may never be there. It's going to be a continual process.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, the world is ever changing, and of course, when you have these black boxes, it's very difficult to understand what's going on inside them. So, we've created the black boxes. We've really have, and we've allowed these black boxes to learn on their own about when we pump a bunch of data into them.
Right.
So unknown to us is how they formulate, manage, and respond.
Yeah.
And that idea of persuasion gets back to, let's go back to DeepSeek again.
Yeah.
Leveraging models that will provide nuanced answers.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that the DeepSeek app was the top app this week downloaded for every platform. Mobile platform. And why is that? Well, because people wanted to test it and try it and take a look. It's ironic that this comes at the same time that at least the US government had banned TikTok, which is yet another Chinese app that had magical underpinnings to it. So these are, again, with all apps, and certainly American apps, UK apps, all these apps are really leveraging the same kind of potential vulnerabilities, which is the output that comes out of them is still going to be as suspect as you might imagine from any particular environment. Biased output. You have biased input, you're likely going to have biased output. And depending on how you prompt these large language models, it's likely you're going to get different biases to come out. So this is an interesting time we live in, and certainly I can feel for these folks on the Microsoft Red team who are trying their best to keep us all safe from these potential harms that are just kind of inbuilt into the magic inside the black box.
Yeah, so I think all these articles together that we talked about today, I think just speak to the AI race, especially the US and China. And it was already heated. It's going to get even hotter. And with the presidential administration change and the big investment in Texas and all those things, it's the stakes are higher than they were 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And I think we're going to see that happen on a continual basis. So we live in very interesting times.
That we do. So you know what that means, Brad? That means that you have to join us for our next discussion next week, because we're going to be covering some more interesting articles on next week's Pulse Check. And of course, join us midweek for our interesting guest that we'll have, which we do every single week. We'll have an interesting guest on, and then you get to listen to Brad and I hypothesize and provide you some of our own opinions about the news of the week. So thanks for joining us today. You can find all the article links in our show notes. Until next time, we'll see you then.